I walked into my own home and found my fiancée kicking my mother on the floor. The woman I was going to marry. The woman who wore my ring. Standing over the woman who sold her house. So I could chase my dreams. What I did next cost me everything I thought I wanted. But it saved the one thing that actually mattered. This is the story of the hardest decision I ever made. Welcome to the story room. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Let me tell you about Daniel Rivera, a man who built an empire from nothing. Daniel owned one of the largest tech companies in California, creating software that changed how hospitals save lives. His success wasn't luck. It was blood, sweat, and sacrifice. But the biggest sacrifice wasn't his. It was his mother's, Rosa. Years ago, when Daniel was just a struggling college student with a dream, Rosa did something most mothers would never dare. She sold the small house she'd spent 20 years paying off. That little home in the quiet neighborhood was all she had. But she believed in her son more than she believed in her own security. "Use this to start your company," she told him, pressing the check into his hands. "I'll be fine. Your future matters more." Now, 15 years later, Daniel had everything. A mansion overlooking the ocean. Cars that cost more than most people's homes. And he was engaged to Victoria, a woman who seemed perfect on paper. Beautiful, sophisticated, connected to all the right people. Daniel's private helicopter landed on his estate just as the sun was rising. He'd been in Tokyo closing a deal worth millions, and it finished 3 days earlier than planned. For the first time in months, he felt light. Free. He couldn't wait to surprise Victoria and his mother. He didn't call ahead. He wanted to see the joy on their faces. But sometimes, the surprises we walk into change everything. The house felt wrong the second Daniel stepped inside. Usually, his mother played classical guitar in the mornings, the soft music floating through the hallways like a warm blanket. Today, there was no music. Instead, he heard voices. Angry voices. Daniel set down his bag slowly, his businessman instincts kicking in. Something was very wrong. He moved quietly down the hallway toward the living room. With each step, the voices became clearer. A woman's voice, sharp and cruel. His mother's voice, weak and pleading. "I told you to stay out of my space." That was Victoria, her voice dripping with disgust. "You're always in the way, always making messes like a child." Daniel froze at the doorway, his heart pounding. What he saw would haunt him forever. His mother, Rosa, was on the floor. Her gray hair had fallen from its usual braid, and her reading glasses lay broken on the marble beside her. She was trying to stand up, her thin arms shaking with effort. And standing over her was Victoria. "Get up," Victoria demanded coldly. "Stop acting so pathetic." When Rosa moved too slowly, Victoria kicked her. Actually kicked her, right in the leg. The sound was hollow and terrible. Rosa cried out softly and curled into herself, protecting her body like a child. Daniel felt his whole world crack open. This woman, his mother, who had given up everything for him, who had held him when he cried, who had worked 3 jobs so he could go to college, was being treated like garbage in his own home. Every muscle in Daniel's body screamed at him to rush forward, to protect her. But something stopped him. Years of difficult business decisions had taught him one thing: the most powerful move isn't always the loudest one. With trembling hands, he pulled out his phone and pressed record. The camera captured everything. Victoria's face, twisted with anger. Her words, venomous and clear. The kick. His mother's pain. "This is my house now." Victoria sneered down at Rosa. "You're just a guest here. Learn your place, old woman." Daniel stood in the shadows, recording, his heart breaking with every second. When Victoria finally stormed away, her heels clicking like gunshots on the marble, Daniel remained frozen. The silence that followed felt heavier than any sound. His phone was still in his hand, the evidence safely stored. He hated that he needed to record it, but he knew, deep down, that what came next would require proof. Daniel rushed to his mother the moment Victoria was gone. He dropped to his knees beside her, his expensive suit pressing against the cold floor. "Mama," he whispered, his voice cracking in a way it hadn't since he was a boy. He carefully helped her sit up, terrified of hurting her more. Up close, he saw everything. The bruise already forming on her leg. The redness in her eyes from holding back tears. The way she made herself small, as if trying to disappear. "I'm okay, Mijo," Rosa said softly, forcing a smile that destroyed him. She lost her temper. I shouldn't have touched her things. Even now, even after being hurt, his mother was protecting someone else. Making excuses. Taking the blame. That broke Daniel more than the violence itself. He wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and held her hand. It was shaking. "You sold your home for me," he said quietly, the memory flooding back. "You counted pennies so I could eat. You worked until your hands bled, so I could have a better life." Rosa touched his face gently. "And I would do it all again. You're a good son, Daniel." Those words, meant to comfort him, only strengthened his resolve. He realized something in that moment. Being powerful isn't about how much money you have or how loudly you can shout. Real power is knowing what you're willing to protect and what you're willing to cut away, no matter how much it costs you. Daniel stood up, straightened his jacket, and made a decision that would change everything. By evening, he had made the calls. His lawyer, his head of security, 2 trusted members of his household staff. Before the story continues, subscribe. These stories are written to change lives. The mansion no longer felt like a home. It felt like a courtroom. And justice was coming. Victoria walked into the dining room that evening with her usual confidence. She wore an elegant dress, her makeup perfect, her smile practiced and ready. "Daniel," she said brightly, "I didn't know you were back. Why is everyone here? Is this some kind of celebration?" Daniel stood at the head of the table. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He simply pressed a button on his phone. The large screen on the wall flickered to life. Victoria's voice filled the room first, cold and cruel. Then the image appeared. Victoria standing over Rosa. The kick. The words. Every terrible second captured in crystal clear video. The room went silent. Victoria's parents, who Daniel had also invited, stared at the screen in horror. One of the staff members covered her mouth. The lawyer remained perfectly still, his face unreadable. "Turn it off," Victoria hissed, stepping forward. "This isn't what it looks like." She provoked me. Daniel raised one hand and she stopped. The video played until the very end. Only then did the screen go black. The silence that followed felt like a judgment. "You're overreacting," Victoria said, her voice shaking now. "She's always playing the victim. You know how old people can be." Daniel spoke for the first time, his voice calm but colder than ice. "The engagement is over. There will be no wedding." Victoria's face went pale. "You can't be serious. After everything we planned? After..." "My mother sold her home, so I could build my company," Daniel interrupted. "She raised me alone. She sacrificed everything so I could have a future. Anyone who hurts her has no place in my life." His lawyer slid a folder across the table. "Everything in this house belongs to Daniel Rivera," the lawyer stated clearly. "Miss Victoria Hartwell has no legal claim to any property, assets, or accounts." Victoria's mask finally cracked. Her confidence shattered into panic. "Daniel, please," she begged, reaching for him. "I made a mistake. It won't happen again. I love you." Daniel stepped back, his decision already made. "You have 1 hour to pack your personal belongings. Security will escort you out." The words were final. No anger. No shouting. Just truth, delivered with the weight of absolute certainty. As Victoria was led away, crying and pleading, Daniel didn't move. He didn't feel satisfaction. He didn't feel revenge. He felt relief. Because protecting the people you love sometimes means cutting away the people who hurt them, no matter how much it costs you. The days after Victoria left felt different. The mansion seemed brighter somehow, as if shadows had been lifted. Morning sunlight poured through the windows, warm and gentle. Daniel filed a police report with the video evidence. A restraining order followed. There was no pleasure in it, only necessity. But the real changes went deeper. Daniel ordered the cold marble floors replaced with warm hardwood that wouldn't be slippery under his mother's feet. The sharp-edged modern furniture disappeared, replaced with soft couches and comfortable chairs. He filled the house with flowers and the things his mother loved. Most importantly, Daniel changed himself. He canceled his trip to Singapore. He delegated more work to his team. He started coming home before sunset. In the evenings, he cooked simple meals with his mother. Rice and beans like when he was young. They talked. Really talked. She told him stories from his childhood, memories he'd been too busy to hear before. Some days she laughed. Some days her voice trembled. But every day, she seemed stronger. One quiet afternoon, Rosa looked at her son and said something that made everything clear. "You didn't just offend me, Mijo. You chose me." Daniel met her eyes and spoke the truest words he'd ever said. "I will always choose you, Mama." News of the broken engagement spread through their social circles. Some people whispered that Daniel had been too harsh, that he'd overreacted. When a reporter asked him about it months later, he gave one simple answer that ended all discussion. "Money means nothing if it can't protect the people who sacrificed everything for you." Daniel donated millions to organizations helping victims of elder abuse and domestic violence. Not for publicity, not for tax breaks, but because he understood the silence that surrounds suffering. Because he knew what it felt like to almost miss it. In the end, this wasn't a story about revenge. It was a story about understanding what really matters. Daniel had built an empire. He'd made millions. He'd traveled the world and shaken hands with presidents. But the truest measure of his success wasn't any of that. It was the quiet evening moments, sitting beside his mother, knowing she was safe, knowing she was loved, knowing that when it mattered most, he had the courage to draw a line and the strength to stand on the right side of it. Because real wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the people you protect and the promises you keep. And Daniel Rivera had kept his promise. Thanks for your watching. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe to the Story Room for meaningful stories that inspire and teach life lessons.